sure, exactly. I didn't realize that it was. Who's the Hitman? Oh, sure. It's a favorite. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Okay, Drew, play a chord, pick a chord.
Do you want to use this tuner? G.
I'll tell you when we're going to begin.
Here.
Barry, have we gone live? Huh? We are good to go. I understand that we have gone live. Shabbat Shalom, dear friends. Good Shabbos to each and every one of you. Thank you for braving the elements and the heat outdoors. Welcome into the relative cool environment of the Molish Sanctuary. Very grateful that you are with us this evening. I have my two sidekicks with me, so what can go wrong? Drew Meal and Alan Levin, very grateful to both of you for being on the Bima this evening. And on your behalf, we want to welcome hopefully many Bethomnics and visitors who are with us on live stream. Thank you for being with us in a virtual capacity, and look forward to your participation in our service tonight. So we're going to begin on page 9. Invite you please to take out a copy of your Siddur. We're on page 9, and we read responsively. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. And so we are here this evening, both in person and in a virtual capacity, to embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. Fellow Bethomnics, Shabbat Shalom to each and every one of you once again, and feel free to join with Drew and with Alan, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. V'al kulam. I can't hear you. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. V'al kulam. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol ha'olam. Salam. Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, v'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, v'al kulam.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Please God, peace is yet to be here on earth as it is in the high heavens above. So in welcoming you once again, why don't you take an opportunity at this time to greet each other with a Shabbat Shalom and with a good Shabbos. Hadlakot Nerot de Shabbat for the kindling of our Shabbat candles as we turn back to page 3. It's our great pleasure at this time to call upon our good friends Bev and Marv Barish to please step forward. For those of you who are able to rise, we invite you please to do so at this time. Page 3.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generation of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu le'hanik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvah, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Bev and Marv. We invite you please to be seated at this time. We'll look forward to a communal celebration of Kiddush and Motzi at the conclusion of our service. We invite you to turn to pages 20 and 21, our beloved Erev Shabbat anthem, L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla.
L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shenu tiferet beliti la 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 l'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. Hitorivri, Kiva orek, uri, shir daveri, kavod Adonai, adolikni la 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 la, l'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. Boi v'shalom hateret bala, Gam b'simcha u'b'zahola, Tov kemunei am segula, Boi kala. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabla.
Page 24, we welcome the Malachei Hasharet, the ministering angels. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Amlakim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem l'shalom, Malachei hashalom, Malachei elyon. Mi melech Malachei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei hashalom, Malachei elyon. Mi melech Malachei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sechem l'shalom, Malachei hashalom, Malachei elyon. Mi melech Malachei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Page 26, Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yomad v'rach yutei v'yomlich malhutei.
B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Bahagala, Bahagala, u'vizman kahariv ve'yimaru. Amen.
Yehei shemei Rabbah mavorach, li'olam no me'amaya.
Yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'arit romam v'yitnatsei, v'yithadar v'yithalel v'yithalal, shemei l'kudusha.
Brichu.
Le'alam min kol birchata v'shirata.
Tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'olma ve'imaru.
Amen. Baruch Adonai, Hamevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai, Hamevorach, Le'olam Va'ed.
Together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhma poteach sha'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umasader et hakochavim, b'mishmorotehem barakia kirtzono. Bore yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom umevi laila, umavdiu bein yom uvein laila, Adonai tzavaot shemo, Eochai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu, le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amcha ahavta, Torah mitzvot kukim umishpatim, otanu limadata. Together. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, and yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Shem Kavod, Malchuto Leolam, Leolam Vaed, Leolam, Leolam Vaed.
V'ahavata et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta baham b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvelechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם emet. Page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. Together, the high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world renewed. To work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה, זה לי אנוכי אמרו. אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד. ונאמר kifad Adonai et Yaakov, ugalo mihazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch hu v'ruch shemo.
Gal Yisrael.
Together. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomrenu l'chayim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, v'taknenu beitza tova milfanecha, v'hoshienu l'ma'an shemecha. Together. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
You all have a singing part in this. You got to sing the repeats, and I have to hear you, okay? Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
The incomparable duet of Mil and Levin.
You think we actually rehearsed?
We rise, for those that are able to, for the tefillah on page 46. Betham, these words are forever on our lips. Pray as if everything depended on God, but act as if everything depended on you.
na Svatai tifta Ananana Ufi Agi Tehila Teka Ananana Adonai Ananana Svatai tifta Ufi Agid Tahilat Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avoteinu V'Imoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh Hakol, V'Zocher Hazdei Avot V'Yimachot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei B'neihem, L'man Shmo B'Yahava, Melech Gozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, V'Yizrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Mito, Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalchel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Mutim Berakamim Rabim, Somet Noflim Berofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umkaye Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umidom Elav, Melech Meid, Umekayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, B'nei Amanat Ha'il Chayot, Baruch atah Adonai, Mikayeh, Amen. HaKadosh, V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom, Yehalleluya Selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'el HaKadosh.
Silently, Balachash, all the way through now to page 62. Those who wish or need to be seated at this time, please feel free to do so. And then we'll join back together again with Drew and with Alan.
Ose Shalom Bimromav Uyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imaru Amen. Ose Shalom Bimromav Uyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yoshvei Tevel Amen. Ose Shalom Bimromav Uyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yimaru Amen. Ose Shalom Bimromav Uyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yoshvei Tevel Amen.
Birkat Refuah, the prayer for healing, page 253. Mi sheberach avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech et hacholim ha'hem HaKodesh Baruch Hu yimalei rachamim aleihem lachlimam urapotam ulhachzikam v'yishlach mehira refuah shlema min hashamayim ruafat hanefesh uruafat haguf b'toch sha'ar cholei Yisrael hashat ba'agla ufisman kariv v'nomar. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal, as this evening, this Shabbat, we call to mind Barry Abrams, Cynthia Baylor, Noah Beaton, Lisa Cades, Sandy Chernow, Matt Cozen, Andy Dorfman, Marilyn Eisner, Sheila Evans, Lou Geddes, Stuart Geddes, Brian Geiger, Paul Issakoff, Bernie Crick, Rissel Shirabat Esther Malka Chaya, David Lieberman, Spencer Liebowitz, Rosanna Moses, Gershona Binyamina Batsorova Levi, Stan Oliver, Harvey Ostroff, Joan Ostroff, Sherry Panicelli, Vagia Partielli, Sharon Paul, Kelly Quagliotti, Rebitzer David Rachmiel, Ben Sarah Valevi, Cooper Roberts, Linda Scussel, Molly Tinkelman, Beverly Tisdale, Jack Velkoff, Judy Weiss, Cecile Zlotnick, and Bruce Zucker. If there are any other names that you'd like to publicly affirm or mention at this time, please feel free to do so if you would. Helene? Thank you. Eileen? Thank you very much. Mark? Thank you. Rini? Thank you. Elliot? Thank you very much. Please, Linda? Thank you very much. Bev? Thank you very much. Linda? Thank you. Ellen? Thank you. Arlene? Thank you very much. Please, Karen? Thank you. Joanne? Thank you. Thank you. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and for their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send each a refuah shlema, a complete renewal of guf, of body, and of neshama, and of soul. And together, let us say,
Amen.
Amen.
Misheperach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us,
Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, Betham. Good Shabbos to you once again. I would like this evening to dedicate my remarks to the memory, the righteous memory of Rabbi Dov Mama, Zichrono Tzadik Livracha, who passed away earlier this week in Jerusalem at the age of 87. He was born in Poland in 1935. Dov and his parents moved to Sweden in 1948. And then he took the giant leap of faith in moving over to London in 1957 and was a member of, if I remember correctly, was a member of the very first graduating class of the Leo College in London, my alma mater, receiving smicha, his ordination, in 1962. He was the distinguished senior rabbi of Aleph Gardens, one of the most prominent Reform synagogues in London, respected and admired lecturer at the Leo College during my time there. Rabbi Mama, as some of you know, became the senior rabbi of Holy Blossom Temple in Toronto in 1983 and retired from that position in 2000. He was a former president of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, prolific author, lecturer, thinker. He and his wife, Fredzia, made Aliyah a number of years ago, and he remained a passionate, eloquent, and outspoken spokesperson for religious tolerance and inclusiveness. And it's within that specific context that I want to dedicate my remarks to him this evening. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May Rabbi Dov Mama's righteous memory be for an everlasting blessing. So I recall that very many years ago, I started to compile a family tree. And with the help of we're going back many, many years, with the help of my grandparents who were alive at the time, and other far-flung relatives across the world, I was somehow able to piece together the scattered remnants of my long-lost deceased relatives on both sides of the family. It was no easy task, and truth be told, I didn't get very far either. But I considered the task, nevertheless, important enough to warrant my attention and my interest. Just to give you an example, and I think some of you are aware, my late paternal grandfather was responsible for having legally shortened our last name from Leibowitz to Lieb. My late maternal grandfather was responsible for having legally changed his last name from Rubenstein to Russell. So it's a true story. So it seems to me that we Jews are naturally predisposed to mapping our ancestral past. After all, it's a preoccupation that goes back to biblical times. And at the very beginning of tomorrow morning's Sedra, Parashat Pinchas, we encounter yet another census in which, this time, all able-bodied men over the age of 20 are registered for the ultimate purpose of dividing the land among the tribes and then providing a militia for the forthcoming war against the Midianites. Numbers chapter 26 is a lengthy and exhaustive list of all of the clans, the number of, as I mentioned, able-bodied men in each tribe, and their total sum. And so you might say that it's all about census records, genealogies, family history. And some skeptics might well ask, why go to such lengths to trace family trees and old census records? Why care about the ancestral tribe or family that I come from? What difference ultimately does it make? Arthur Kurzweil, and I hope that some of you have heard of him, Arthur Kurzweil, the eminent American author and educator, publisher, Jewish genealogical expert, believes that genealogy is an important pursuit because it brings generations together. It brings extended families together. It inspires family reunions. Many of you can relate to that. There are, he states, so many benefits to pursuing one's genealogy. But he also writes the following, and I quote, "There is a fringe benefit from genealogy that I've come to believe has taken its rightful place at the top of my list for the reasons why there is value to what some think is nonsense. After all, in a Torah that is supposed to guide us on the path to God, in a Torah that is supposed to inspire us to be righteous, why be preoccupied with census records, with tribal records?" Precisely because Arthur Kurzweil argues, and I quote, "More than anything, the pursuit of my family tree has offered me religious tolerance. It has been the major influence on my own response to the heated debate about pluralism within the Jewish community. It has been the inspiration for my," I'm quoting Art Kurzweil, "it has been the inspiration for my dedication to the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael, the love of the Jewish people." Why, asks Kurzweil? Because genealogy has taught me that I am every Jew. That's one word, all lowercase letters, italicized. Genealogy has taught me that I am every Jew. I'm not a Chassid, I'm not a Misnagid, I'm not a Galiciana, I'm not a Litvak, I am not ultra-Orthodox, I'm not secular. I am one little leaf on one little branch of a huge, glorious tree that contains everything. Who I am, Kurzweil articulates, has so much to do with choices made by family members long before I was ever born. My extended family includes all of the Jewish family. In my family, there are Hasidim, there are communists, there are people who have converted. I am, Kurzweil proudly proclaims, every Jew. I mentioned previously that Arthur Kurzweil absolutely believes that his abiding interest in Jewish genealogical research has had a direct impact and an influence on his understanding of and respect for religious tolerance. And I was so intrigued by this notion that I decided to contact him. And though we don't know one another and had never communicated with each other before, I'm aware that he has achieved a fine scholarly reputation throughout the American Jewish community and beyond. And so I was especially interested in the premise that while Arthur Kurzweil regards himself as a strictly observant Jew, he nevertheless espouses a personal doctrine of tolerance, of respect, and of acceptance of those who are not of his religious ilk. What I asked him, what would he say about the Chilul Hashem, about the desecration of God's name that occurred recently at the Kotel, the Western Wall in Jerusalem? So before I share his enlightening response with you, let me bring you up to speed in case you hadn't heard. Yesterday, 3 weeks ago, Thursday, June the 30th, corresponded with Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. 3 American conservative Jewish families were holding separate B'nai Mitzvah families at the wall's so-called Ezrat Yisrael, the egalitarian section which doesn't require gender separation, as is the case, as we well know, in the adjoining separate men and women's sections of the Kotel. Many of you are aware of the fact that I have spoken publicly about this admittedly highly controversial area adjacent to the Kotel on several occasions in the past. Regretfully, sadly, I'm forced to do so again tonight by virtue of the abomination that occurred as these families were celebrating. Suddenly, and without provocation, dozens of ultra-Orthodox Haredi youth descended upon the Ezrat Yisrael, upon the area, disrupting the religious ceremony by blowing whistles and screaming invectives against these perfectly innocent conservative Jews, denouncing them as animals, please forgive me, as shiksas, as Reform Jews, and Nazis. Yes, you heard that correctly. And in fact, we're told that the grandfather of one of the B'nai Mitzvah was himself a Holocaust survivor, and his cane was thrown over the side of the balcony. David Horowitz of the Times of Israel wrote, and I quote, "Yes, Jews celebrating a coming of age in the faith were castigated by fellow Jews as genocidal Nazis." But Betham, my dear friends, that's not all. The fanatical youth then went about ripping up the Siddurim, their prayer books. Here is an example. Here is the blown up photograph. There it is. You can clearly see the ripped up pages from their Siddur. And the irony, now don't forget, this was a weekday shacharit, a weekday morning service. And so for those of you that know your liturgy, here's the Tov Beinecha. There is part of the Chatima of the concluding formulaic blessing. You know what this is? This particular page that was ripped apart? None other than Sim Shalom, the blessing for peace towards the end of the daily Amidah. I asked Monica to blow this up for me as best as she possibly could. That's not all. I saw a very short video clip with my own eyes, no more than 10 or 15 seconds in all, of one of the youth wiping his nose with one of those pages. Yes, you heard me correctly. And if that hideous act doesn't defy any and all bounds of common decency, then quite frankly, I don't know what does. Let me quote Horowitz once again, because he articulates it far better than I ever could. And I quote, "I still can't get my head around the depths of that internal hatred and the readiness that it engenders on dark days like Thursday to regard fellow Jews as the most notorious of enemies. And I cannot fathom how that can extend to tearing up and then still further desecrating prayer books that contain the holy names of God." Unquote. Incidentally, you should know that a name familiar to all of us, Professor Deborah Lipstadt, the United States Special Envoy for Monitoring and Combating Anti-Semitism, was so outraged that she said the following, and I quote, "Had such a hateful incident, had such incitement happened in any other country, there'd be little hesitation in labeling it anti-Semitism." Amen to that. Sadly, appallingly, the security police present at the time did little, if anything, to stop the debacle. And apparently their protocol requires their intervention as a last resort, and only when there's the likelihood of any kind of physical violence, physical attack. Quite frankly, it is unconscionable that these young perpetrators were not apprehended and punished for their reprehensible and abominable behavior. The fact that government ministers and even Chevrei Knesset and members of the Knesset, most of them, practically all of them, completely ignored the atrocity is inexcusable. Thank goodness the highly influential Sochnut, the Jewish agency, the Board of Governors of the Jewish agency, stepped up to the plate and unanimously passed a resolution, mind you, a very lukewarm resolution, condemning what it called a, quote, despicable protest, and to identify actions that would, quote, ensure that all Jews are welcomed to Ezrat Yisrael as they are all members of the Jewish people family, unquote. The incident, by the way, promoted and prompted fierce condemnation from major American and international Jewish groups, the Reform, of course, and conservative movements among them. All insisted that Prime Minister Lapid and the government take immediate steps to address security issues once and for all at the egalitarian section. But needless to say, this resolution did not include, it's the reason why it was unanimous apparently, did not include the implementation of the long frozen, we've spoken about this before, so-called Western Wall Compromise, which would once and for all grant non-Orthodox streams of Judaism official representation in the management of the Kotel and grant once and for all official status to Ezrat Yisrael, the egalitarian section. Rabbi Rick Jacobs, a name that you should all be familiar with, the president of our Union for Reform Judaism, put it bluntly: we Reform Jews are demonized, and when you demonize people, you make them vulnerable to attack. Haredi leaders have said that Reform Jews are worse than Holocaust deniers. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention at least one silver lining that came out of this, it had to have been, traumatic incident. Rabbi Avi Shafran, spokesperson for Agudat Israel of America, condemned the, and I quote, thugs who hail from my world. To my great shame, and that of only truly principled Orthodox Jews, there is no excuse, none whatsoever, for downplaying the sheer loathsomeness of the disruption by a group of young Orthodox Jews of non-Orthodox B'nai Mitzvah celebrations. That those who participated in the hateful nastiness didn't understand how to treat fellow Jews from different backgrounds is tragic. What happens, Rabbi Shafran wrote, fills me with sadness. Now, while Rabbi Shafran's mea culpa is to be applauded, sadly, it doesn't contain any concrete, practical steps to alleviate, let alone remove, the way in which the non-Haredi Jews and Zionists are discussed and treated in their yeshivot and other educational institutions. Listen, if you would, to what one respondent wrote. It's very short, 2 sentences. Rabbi Shafran, it is your yeshivot that fill these youngsters with contempt for their fellow Jews. I have witnessed this firsthand for the last 40 years, unquote. So I promised you that I would share Arthur Kurzweil's response to my email. And this is what he wrote, and I quote, "Dear Rabbi Lieb, it was a pleasure reading your email. you can certainly quote me. I don't see any difference between Reform and Conservative, Orthodox, Hasidic, Reconstructionist, and Renewal Jews. We are all Jews. Everyone picks and chooses. Everyone. There are many so-called Orthodox Jews who don't follow the halakha of Shammai, who urges us to smile as we greet anyone and everyone. And as Rabbi Steinsaltz said to me, there is a special place in hell for people who think that to be a Jew is to simply follow the Shulchan Aruch. We Jews cannot afford to be intolerant of each other. We cannot afford it. There is room enough for everyone. If I am any kind of Jew, I consider myself, now don't forget, what I quoted before, by the way, was from 25 years ago, I must admit, when he referred to himself as every Jew. This is what he wrote to me last week. If I am any kind of Jew, I consider myself to be an ultra-flexidox Jew. An ultra-flexidox Jew. I can daven anywhere. The Almighty is everywhere. As for the Haredim who tried to intimidate others, the only Jews that I am intolerant of are intolerant Jews. So to conclude, Arthur Kurzweil reminds us all that just as much as genealogy can inspire tolerance, there's another time-hallowed pursuit that can have a profound impact on our desperate need for open-mindedness and acceptance of our differences, and that is none other than the study of Talmud. One can disagree. One can flatly argue that someone is absolutely wrong. You'll find that, of course, on any page, on any daf of the Talmud. One can fight for one's position with the greatest passion. But in the end, we are still part of the same Jewish family. And that family, our Torah portion tomorrow morning tells us, is deeply connected at its very core. Despite all of our differences, despite the fact that we come from different tribes, we are all the children of Israel. Ken Yehי Ratzon. Shabbat Shalom. We are going to continue with Aleinu, our service of adoration, Aleinu, second Hebrew paragraph, page 282. If I may have the pleasure of calling upon Shelley and Irv Chazen and Anne and Richard Yeeses to please step forward at this time. That would be wonderful. Second Hebrew paragraph, page 282, as we rise.
Aleinu l'shabech ladon hakol, ha'teik gdula v'yotzeh b'reishit, shelo asanu k'mei haratzot, v'lo zamanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam helpenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים מיוסר הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל Ushkinatu zo, begove meromi. Hu Eloheinu Einod, Emet Malkeinu Efesu Lato, Kakatu Betorato, Viadata Hayom Levatavota El Levavecha. Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim Bashamayim Bimal Ushkinaret Yaharet Mitachat Ein Od V'nemar V'chaya Adonai Lemelech Kol Haaretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai Echad Ushamo Echad.
Page 290. The words of the late Rabbi Chaim Stern. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love and hope and dream to be and oh to lose, a thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love, what death has touched. Page 295. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at the season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Samuel Barzilian, Martin Katz, Rabbi Dov Mama, Arlene Ellen Satz, and Barbara Wolfson, who passed away during Shloshim this past month. Tonight, we also call to mind Bruce Scott Barish, Max Barsky, Herbert Burks, Leon W. Bernstein, Sonia Sunny Bernstein, Aaron Charney, Millicent Charney, Barry Chazen, Sarah Cohen, William Cohen, Eva Dickerman, Melanie Fagus, Jenny Feldbaum, Samuel H. Finkelstein, Joseph Friedman, Louis Gassel, Anna Geller, Louis Glasman, Pamela Goldstein, Nancy Jawa Gordon, Bessie Grabelski, Sarah Grudes, Sol E. Green, Addie Jensen, Francis Kimmel, Paul Kish, Minnie Klein, Robert Allen Cogan, Irving H. Lewis, Sidney Lewis, William Lowenthal, Maisie McGill, Herman A. Mendelson, Irene Miller, Samuel Moss, Abraham Nathan, Shirley Olshansky, Joseph Orlov, Bernice Polikoff, Harry M. Polson, Giselle Prussian, David Ripkin, Pearl Saltzman, Alan T. Schlafman, Joseph Schneider, Jesse Siegel, Bernard Simmons, Max Stein, Anna Steinberg, Rebecca Lauren Stupp, Francis Babe Sukonik, Gertrude Sussman, Joseph Sussman, Louis J. Tabby, Louis Taffler, Tilly Tarnoff, Milton Tendler, Philip Warsaw, and Martin Zucker, whose Yortzeiten occurred during the course of this past week, and all those other dear ones who we now remember with tender affection, together as always with these 6 million of our martyred brethren who perished in the Shoah, and all those who gave their lives in defense of the state of Israel and of the United States, and all those who gave their lives and those whom we remember with tender affection. Zichronam livracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing. Yit gadal v'yit gadash mei rabba, amen. Bioma divrach yirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agalau fisman kariv yimru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba muvorach liolam ulalmei ulamaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yitpoar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiran ba'olma v'yimru, amen. Yehei shlam rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru, amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us and all Israel, to which we say, amen. And may the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, amen. Please do be seated. It's my pleasure at this point to call upon our President, Josh Posnan, to extend greetings and for this evening's announcements. Thank you, Josh.
Hi, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thanks for coming out on this sauna of an evening. Here's what's going on at Beth Am right now. Torah study tomorrow morning at 9 and peer led at 10, but do not come to the building because they're both going to be on Zoom this week. Also, due to the excessive temperatures that we're having this weekend, Rabbi Lieb's nature walk is being rescheduled for the 30th, next Saturday. Rabbi Tornberg. Right. What did I say? Oh, well, you can do it again. Sister Hadmajan continues to be in person on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. August 10th from 2 to 7 p.m., the American Red Cross Blood Drive is going to be right here at Beth Am. As of yesterday, there were 28 slots available, so make sure to reserve your spot in advance. We also need a volunteer to be here to open the doors from 2 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. If you're interested, please get in touch with Art Davis. Let's talk about Shul Cloud. If I ask, could I have a show of hands, who's on Shul Cloud? Oh, I still see some hands that are not raised. So, if you haven't yet activated your account, and I'm sure there's some people on the live stream as well whose hands were not up, please try to do that as soon as you can. It's the place to see and update all your information, pay your bills, make donations, sign up for events. There's even a member directory, so you can get your friend's phone number to call them to go out for coffee. Call the office if you need any help. Monica, Stacy, Jackie, they'll all be willing to help you. And whenever you come to the building, make sure to bring some non-perishable food items to support Social Action's ongoing collection for the Jenkintown Food Cupboard. Bins are always at the back door. And Shabbat Shalom. Stay cool out there.
Thank you. If I just may make one addendum, one announcement with regard to Shul Cloud, you are, and of course I'm addressing all of you, including our fellow Beth Amniks at home, you're aware of the fact that your clergy are in the habit of sending daily notifications, whether it's for in a recognition of birthdays or anniversaries or even Yahrzeit. Specifically with regard to Yahrzeit, I have noticed that there are many, many errors. I'm not suggesting for a moment that it's your fault, but we would like, and I'm saying this on behalf of the office staff, can we implore you at some point to access your Shul Cloud, to look, if you would please, at those records, and if they are correct and you would know best, please, if you would go ahead and make the necessary change, that would be very much appreciated. If, on the other hand, you would prefer the office to do that, just simply call and they'll certainly oblige. We are going to conclude our Kabbalat Shabbat service, I believe, with Adon Olam on page 321. And then if you have time to join us, mind you, in the rear lobby, not the main lobby, but in the rear lobby this evening for Kiddush and Motzi, we'd love to see you there. Adon Olam 321.
Adon Olam, Hashem Alak, B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa V'chefso Kol, Azai Melech, Shemoni Kra. V'achare kiklotako levado yimlok nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yeh b'tifara. Adon Olam Hashem Alak B'terem Kol Yitziv Nira Le'et Nesav V'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemoni Kra Achacharei Likot HaKol V'adim Kol Prorava Hu Havahu V'hoveh Hu Yiyeh B'tifara Adon Olam Hashem Alak B'terem Kol Yitziv Nira Le'et Nesav V'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemoni Kra Acharei kiklot hakol, v'vado yimlok nora, v'hu hayam v'hu hoveh, v'tifara, v'hu hayam v'hu hoveh, v'tifara.
That was lovely. That was a great, lovely, abbreviated Adon Olam, but very beautiful. Please join with me in thanking my two sidekicks this evening, Drew Meal and Alan Levin, for their participation. Very grateful to you, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And to conclude, for Shabbat holiness, which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace, born of friendship and love, we offer thanks and blessing, O God. Shabbat Shalom. Betham, stay cool this Shabbos this weekend, and I'll see you from my little Zoom studio in the basement of my home at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, if you'd like. It'll be a pleasure. Shabbat Shalom to you all. Good Shabbos.
I know, man.
Good Shabbos, gentlemen.
My timing is not so great for him keeping up with me.
I was counting forward.
I can't count, but I can sort of sing. I don't know. There were some notes that were pretty sketchy.
I got a question for you, Rabbi. A genealogist who says genealogy is important.